It is the year 20XX. Everyone's pre-built PC at Best Buy comes with Linux and Hyprland installed on it by default. The Apple stores have MacBooks with new proprietary versions of Hyprland. They're calling it iLand. Your grandson asks you, "Hey, Grandpa, my laptop broke, but I don't know how to reinstall my operating system. What do I do?" What's up guys, my name is Tony, and today I'm going to give you a quick and painless guide on setting up Hyprland on NixOS, optionally with UWSM. Hyprland is a Wayland compositor that really feels like the king of beginner-friendly compositors. It just works out of the box with clean and aesthetically pleasing animations, and it's getting more and more people into Wayland and Linux in general. If you're converting over from a desktop environment such as GNOME, KDE Plasma, or what have you, and you want to start with a Wayland compositor, Hyprland is a great entry-level choice for you. Setting it up with NixOS is quite easy, so let's jump straight into the installation process. We're jumping straight into the minimal ISO, and we'll speedrun this since you've probably seen it 3 times by now. Alright, the first thing we're going to do as always is type sudo -i to jump into the root user. Alright, so the first thing we need to do is run lsblk so we can know what our disk is named. And we do see it is called VDA here, so for me in my situation, I'm ready to start with cfdisk dev VDA. And we'll select GPT for the labels today because we are on a UEFI system. And for the first partition, we'll hit enter and make that 1G. And for the type, let's change that to EFI system, which is going to be our 1 GB boot partition. All right, let's hit J here to go down to the next partition and hit enter on new. And we can just hit enter twice to allocate the remainder of the space to our root partition, which will be a Linux file system as the type, so we don't need to change the type. Let's go ahead and write these changes. Yes to confirm, hit enter on quit, and let's go ahead and make our file systems here. So we'll do mkfs.exe4-l NixOS. That's going to be on dev VDA2. That looks good. And for our boot partition, we'll do mkfs.fat-f32-n for name. We'll do boot, and dev VDA1 will be that partition. And there we go. So to mount these, we'll do mount dev VDA2. We're going to mount that to MNT, and for the boot partition, we'll do mount --mkdir to make the directory here. Dev VDA1, that's going to be at MNT boot. All right, let's confirm with lsblk here, and there we go. We've got our boot partition and our root partition mounted accordingly, so we are ready to generate the NixOS configuration file. Now I know that was a bit of a speed run, but if you actually have serious concerns at this level, I do recommend that you just pause the video, copy the commands, or check out the link below the subscribe button where a written tutorial will accompany this guide. Alrighty, so let's go ahead and generate that config file here with the NixOS generate config. And we're going to do that on root on MNT. And there we go. And we can go ahead and cd into mnt etc NixOS. If we type ls, we do see we've got that configuration file and the hardware configuration file. So we're ready to start tinkering. All right, let's go ahead and create the Flake first today. We're going to do vim flake.nix. And we're going to start out, as we always do here, with a description. It's going to be Hyprland on NixOS. And for the inputs here, we're going to do nixpkgs.url equals, and we're going to make this equal to nixpkgs NixOS unstable. Because today we're feeling like living life on the edge, so we're not even going to deal with 2505. We're just going to go straight to the unstable branch. And of course, we're going to install Home Manager as a module here, so we'll do Home Manager. We are going to set the URL of Home Manager here equal to GitHub Nix community /Home Manager. And we're going to do inputs.nixpkgs.follows equal to nixpkgs. All right. So again, nixpkgs.follows is preventing Home Manager from pulling its own version of Nix packages to keep everything consistent and avoid mismatched package sets. So for the outputs here of our Flake, let's do nixpkgs and Home Manager and ... as the arguments. And we're actually going to do something different today. For the hostname, we're going to do NixOS configurations.hyprland by the way, because we're going to be using Hyprland by the way. And that'll be set to nixpackages.lib.nixos system. And this is where we're going to define our system here. So I'm on x86 technology here. This is not needed anymore, but I still keep it in because I'm a boomer. For the modules here, we will include configuration.nix, of course, and we'll also include home manager .nixOS modules.home manager. And inside of this home manager module, we'll set the home manager attributes like so. Use global packages true. Use user packages true. Users.tony equals import. That's going to be that home.nix file that we haven't created yet. And this one's important for me because I like to make out of store symlinks like a madman. So we'll do backup file extension equals backup. And that'll specify that if we create a folder that would overwrite something that already exists in the config directory, it will rename the current folder to folder/backup instead of breaking. And that looks good for our flake. So let's jump into the configuration file. I am in Vim, so I'm just going to press :EX and go right down to that configuration file. Now, I am going to speed through this part right now. I'm just going to delete all the comments and add some stuff, and we'll talk about it at the end here. So in the editing process, you'll probably see this sped up. All right, so what I just did there was deleted every comment, and I deleted anything that I'm not going to be using in my config today. And this is just going to be a Hyprland build, meaning there will be no other X11 window managers or even any other Wayland compositors today. So we're gonna experiment with just using a TTY auto login. Now, setting this up is gonna be pretty simple. Let's go ahead and add a block here. First thing we wanna do is enable Getty auto login user here. So we'll do services.getty.auto login user. That's going to be Tony. For me, for you, it's going to be your name. And we want to actually enable Hyprland here. So we're going to do programs.hyprland equals. We're going to give Hyprland some attributes. First thing we're going to do, enable equals true. And in case you want to run anything through XWayland, we'll do xwayland.enable equals true. And lastly, the point of today's video is to talk about something called UWSM. Now, UWSM is the Universal Wayland Session Manager. And per the Hyprland wiki, it is a wrapper for the Wayland compositors into the systemd units. Now, if you're not going to care about this, you can simply ignore this step. And quite frankly, after doing some research, I found that this option is more or less deprecated, but I did have somebody reach out to me and ask how to set this up. So we will be setting up UWSM today on Nix. So again, if you don't care about UWSM, you're good to go right now. You can just skip this part here. But for me, I'm going to do with UWSM equals true. And since we are on Hyprland, we're going to have to add some tools here. So let's get a terminal emulator. I personally like Foot, but the default one on Hyprland is Kitty, just in case we get locked into the Hyprland session without Kitty. We're going to be using Waybar for the bar today, and we want Git so we can version control some stuff. Going to use Hyperpaper for the wallpaper management, and that's going to cover it for right now. Everything else we can get later, so we should be good to enable Flakes and Nix command and then move on to our home.nix file. So to enable those, let's do nix.settings.experimental features. We're going to put Nix command here and Flakes. And that looks good here. Just a 48-line file, and we're good to save that and create that simple home.nix file. So we'll go ahead and quit that, and we'll do vim home.nix. For the home.nix here, we'll have config and packages and ... as our arguments. And we're going to return home.username equals Tony, home.home directory equals home Tony. Home.state version will be 25.05. We're going to enable bash here. We'll do enable equals true. And this will be for a quick home manager test here. We'll make that BTW alias. And this part's important here for UWSM. This is the most graceful way I found out how to do this. Because UWSM is known to not play well with display managers, I have simply created a profile extra start command here. It'll be something like this. We'll do if -z Wayland display. So what that's going to check for is if the Wayland display is 0, meaning we're not in a Wayland session. And if xdg vtnr equals 1, so that's going to tell us if the TTY number is 1, we will exec UWSM start-s hyprland-uwsm.desktop. So what that means is that this script will run, and if there's no Wayland display session and we are on TTY1, then we will be starting UWSM here. And again, if you're not using UWSM, you can just replace this entire thing with exec Hyprland. But today, for my situation, I am using UWSM, and we will be doing it like this. So this home.nix file is ready to go. We'll save that and quit that. Let's do a quick sanity check here. We'll do ls-la. Looks like we've got configuration.nix, flake.nix, and home.nix all set up. So we should be good to install NixOS. So let's go ahead and clear that. And let's cd back to the home directory, nixos-install-flake, and that'll be at mnt etc NixOS, and the host name is going to be Hyprland BTW. And if we didn't make any typos, this should just work. So let's go ahead and let that rip. Incredible that that just worked first try. As we see that we're prompted for that password, so I'm going to do my super secure password here. Well, let's clear the terminal here. One more step before I jump into our system is going to be nixos-enter-root/mnt-c, and we're going to run password on Tony, and you're going to use your username for that. Got my super secure password there. Can clear that, and we are ready to reboot. We'll type reboot, and there we go. The system D menu here. And there we go. Blazingly fast startup with auto login. And we're right into Hyprland right now with the UWSM. So as we see, we're instantly booted into Hyprland, which is awesome. Let's do one mild change here so that we are on the correct resolution. That's going to be super Q. Open up that terminal. And I'm going to go ahead and do vim.config hyprland.conf. Oh, this file looks beautiful. We're just going to go down to monitors here. Instead of preferred, we'll do 1920 times 1080. Save that, and it's already much better. Perfect. Let's get rid of this auto-generated line so that we don't have to see that warning at the top. And there we go, even better. And this really does look like a better version of macOS. Like, I've seen macOS a lot just out in public. You know, I'm walking around and I see the Apple store and I'm looking at these MacBooks and I'm like, oh, that's pretty cool. And this really looks like that, which is great for somebody who wants to get started into the compositor world. And I appreciate that. So let's save that and quit that. And clear that. And let's move on to some of the new and cool stuff we can do inside of NixOS. Let's go ahead and test if our home manager is working. Let's type BTW, that's the alias we made. And boom, there we go. I use Hyprland, by the way. All right, so the first thing I'm gonna do is load up some configs that I've already created for Hyprland and Waybar and what have you. So let's make a directory here. We'll do mkdir NixOS.files. And we're going to do sudo cp etc NixOS star, and we're going to put them in NixOS.files. We don't need to receive the usual lecture from the administrator because we're him. So we'll go ahead and just type our password. password. Okay, we're good to go there. And let's clear that. Let's cd into NixOS.files. As we run lsla, we see this is all owned by root, and we got to fix that. So we'll do sudo chown-r tony users dot, and there we go. That fixed that. So now we can actually modify these files. Let's make a directory called config, and we see we've got that config folder now. Let's clear that. So we've got that config directory. Let's move into it, and I'm going to clone 3 of my .files here. So I'll go ahead and do git clone https://github.com/tonybanters/hyper. Gonna do the same thing with the up arrow for foot, and the same thing with the up arrow for Waybar. And there we go. That looks good. We'll do an ls-la here. And I'm gonna sneak peek something later, but we can do something even cooler here. We'll do a nix shell-p new shell, because we have access to nix shell command. Now we're in a shell here with the new shell package. So let's do new to enter new shell, Now if we do an ls, we've got that beautiful tree with these beautiful colors here in a table. So that's great. And this is something about Nix that's kind of something I never talk about, but it's one of the beautiful things about Nix. You can just jump into a shell with any package to just test that package, and you don't permanently install it into your system. And if you like it, you can actually install it. If you don't like it, you can ditch it. So let's get out of that new shell and get out of that Nix shell. Now we don't have access to new here. It says command not found. That just demonstrates the Nix shell. We're going to add something later on to act as a front end to show us those packages. But for now, let's move on to the next step. We need to tell Home Manager about those .files we just created here. So let's go back into our NixOS .files directory. Let's jump into home.nix. Oh my goodness, beautiful color scheme. Let's change that. I had to change that color scheme because it was unreadable. So let's go ahead and add a couple lines here to home.nix to ensure that we are actually pointing to those directories for our config files. We can do that right here at the bottom. We'll do home.file.config/hyper.source equals ./config hyper. And we're going to do the same thing with waybar, and we'll do the same thing with foot. So we can save, quit that file, and we go back to the home directory here. To enable those changes, we're going to do sudo nixos -rebuild switch --flake, and that's going to be at nixos.files, and the host is going to be Hyprland BTW. And there we go. And let's just do a reboot here, just to see how fast that reboot is and how fast that auto login is. And okay, well, I couldn't even finish my sentence. That was blazingly fast. And we have our waybar and our Hyprland config set up here. And there's our foot config. So we're pretty much good to go here already in like 10 minutes. Wow. Well, let's move on to some customization here. So we messed around with Nix shells already, but let's actually go into something that I use on a daily basis. And that's going to be called Nix Search TV. This guide was written up by my friend MZ, and we can use it to install a great tool that helps us search for Nix packages and use commands to just jump right into a Nix shell with that package. So if we scroll down to the Home Manager complete FZF integration part, we can actually just copy this entire block here, and we'll go ahead and open up our home.nix file. And let's go ahead and put this in our package list here. And what this is this is going to write a shell application with the name NS, and it's going to use FZF or FZF depending on which region you're from, and Nix Search TV as the runtime inputs. And it's going to take this nixpkgs.sh script that exists in the Nix Search TV source directory, and that should be it. So we do have a pretty good write-up here by MZ, and this is just my website here. We have a community tab where you can post your own write-ups here, and all the instructions for this are in the GitHub repo of the website. But we've got a couple of really good write-ups here, and one of them here was written about Mango WM, which will be a video in the very, very short foreseeable future here. But I encourage you to check out this community tab, and if you feel like contributing to it, go ahead and do so. It's very easy to set up. I've got an example file in the repo called example.md. But yeah, and we'll go ahead and run NixOS rebuild switch here. All right, let's test that out here by typing ns, and there we go. So now, earlier I showed you that new shell. Let's type new shell here and see what we got. Looks like there's a home manager file here for new shell. You can set up all these attributes. I'm going to scroll down here, and here's that new shell package. And as we can see, we just press Control-I to jump into a shell with that. So we are in a Nix shell here with new shell. So let's just go ahead and type new, and there we go. We now have access to new shell. Do an ls, boom. And we can exit this. Now we're exiting this. So we've exited the new shell and exited the Nix shell. And now we don't have access to new anymore. So NS is a really good tool here, Nix Search TV. You got a couple other options here. So let's try something else. Let's look at something like disk, which is a pretty cool Rust utility to show information about your mounted disks. Now we can do Control-O, and looks like that opens the home page for disk here, which is just the GitHub repo, which is awesome. So we've got a lot of options here, and yeah, for disk, let's actually do Control-I to jump into a shell with disk. And there we go. So we are on Hyprland here with UWSM. We've got a beautiful waybar setup, and we set this up in about 10 minutes. I showed you guys NS. You know, we've got several options here. And normally I would end the video with a Neofetch here. In this case, it would be a niche. But I do want to show something here before I end the video. And it's a little bit of a project that I've been working on, so I'll go ahead and move over to that right now. So I've actually been working on a X11 window manager for about a month, written in Rust. And it's called OXWM. It's just, I couldn't find the perfect window manager, so I decided to build my own. And I will make a video specifically on this in a few weeks, maybe when this is more ready for use, but I do have a repository for this project over there on github.com. And I've got the project structure laid out here and instructions on how to set it up and how to test it and a to-do list and what have you. Let's take a look at the reason why I started this project here. One of the reasons is that, so I would say that this project started because I was daily driving DWL for about 2 weeks, and I had to add some patches to it manually. And because of the variables being so bad and so poorly named, I didn't understand the code base at a glance. And I thought that due to the arbitrary elitism of the Suckless team, some things needed to be changed. So if we take a look at this is actually a patch for DWM. This is called vanitygaps.c. So this isn't even original source code. This is just a community patch. You're looking at this big block here, and it is a linked list, so that is pretty cool. But the problem with it for me is that at a glance, you look at these variable names and you have OH, OV, IH, IV, MX, etc. I don't know what these are. I'm not going to know what these are at a glance. I've got to understand and think longer than I need to just know what these are. And there's really no point for that because we don't live in 1991 anymore. We are actually in the year of 2026, so we can just use regular variable names. So what I ended up doing was I made my own project in Rust called OXWM, which is supposed to be sort of a DWM inspired window manager, but without all of the bad things about DWM, like the variable naming conventions and the lack of sane defaults out of the box. So if you could take a look at this here, I do have my tiling function here, and it's very easy to follow. Even if you don't know Rust, the variable names are pretty obvious: screen width, screen height, and it's pretty easy to follow compared to that function there. But not only that, it actually includes some sane out-of-the-box defaults. So for example, I have gaps included out of the box, toggle, you can toggle them in, toggle them off. Whereas in DWM, you actually have to patch gaps in. And I get that they want to keep it minimal, and you know, I respect that. But for me, in my situation, if we take a look at VTop here, it's already minimal. OXWM is only running on 9 megabytes, and this is on a virtual machine, which pre-allocates memory anyway. On my laptop, I've got it under 7 megabytes of RAM, and I don't think we need to go crazy with these terrible variable names. So this is a project I've been working on, and if you want to take a look at this, head over to this repo here. There's going to be instructions on how to clone this and test it yourself, and I've got people submitting pull requests already, so this will be more of a community project in the long term, and I really look forward to kind of developing this and adding Wayland support long term, and you know, really building out a true window manager that fits my suitable needs. So with that being said, I want to thank you guys for checking out the video, and if you have anything you would like me to cover that is Linux or free and open source software related, just drop a comment and I'll put it in the pipeline. And it would not be a proper ending without an obligatory Neofetch.